Every year, Apple releases a new iPhone, and every year I hear the same thing. Apple released the same phone as last year. In a sense, that could be true, but it's also wrong. But let's talk about it first, because the iPhone 12 Pro Max isn't just any iPhone. Hello everyone, this is Matt from Real World Review. Check out the social media listed above and the description for some extra things. Now let's check out the best phone that Apple has to offer. The screen is honestly one of the best parts about this phone. There is always some controversy about the iPhone screens, but this is definitely the best Apple has to offer. This is the biggest screen at 6.7 inches, being a truly flat Super Retina XDR display, or a flexible OLED display. The screen resolution is 2778 by 1284, making it the same pixel density as the iPhone 11 Pro Max at 458 pixels per inch. Honestly, it's pretty much the same as the iPhone 11 Pro Max, but more refined and with a ceramic shield. That just means that it is going to be harder to break, but we'll see how true that is in the future. Side note, this is a 60Hz display, which is annoying to me, but it is one of the smoothest 60Hz display that I've ever used. The screen is literally flat, like I said, and it makes putting a screen protector on a much easier and a much nicer experience. Usability doesn't really change that much, but it hasn't been flat since the iPhone 5S or first generation SE, depending on how you look at it. The screen brightness is perfect, sitting at 800 nits or 1200 nits with HDR content. Just like you would expect with an expensive Apple device, the screen works in almost every setting that you will need it for. The resolution is slightly over 1080p, so watching 1440p video looks amazing. Sure, the resolution could be better, but regardless of where you use the screen, it will be bright, vivid, and just the right size. With this said, this is a pretty big screen, and yes, the notch is here to stay. The design is the other slight controversy about this phone. People say that it looks like the iPhone 5, and that's somewhat true. Now the back glass is pretty much the same as the iPhone 11 Pro Max, but the blue just looks so much nicer. And the back is mostly flat as well. But still, it is very similar, being the same matte glass on the back and reflective near the cameras. There's also a little area under the camera, but that's for LiDAR. We'll go over that in a little bit. The middle stainless steel band is super shiny and ready for scratches. This is more durable than aluminum, but I know that it'll scratch really easily. Then this little thing right here is the 5G wideband antenna. It is glass, and it's kind of strange to me. Notice that the frame, screen, and back is flat. This makes it so you can actually sit up the phone, or have it upside down, depending on how you look at it. Once you pick up the phone, you realize how heavy this phone is, sitting at 228 grams. To compare, the Samsung Z Fold 2 is 282 grams, and that phone opens up. This phone is water resistant, beating past iPhones, having an IP68 rating, surviving 6 meters for 30 minutes. This is assuming that Apple assembled the phone properly. There are so many antennas on this phone with many different things. We got Wi-Fi 6 support, Bluetooth 5.0, 5G sub 6 GHz in millimeter wave, gigabit LTE, the U1 ultra wideband chip, NFC, GPS, GLONASS, Galileo, you get the point. Lastly, the back is glass, and Apple gives us wireless charging, but it's slightly different and a little bit gimmicky. The back supports MagSafe now, which is kind of like a little puck, and it allows for 15 watts of wireless charging. There's a whole bunch of things going on with this MagSafe portion, but ultimately there are magnets that hold the puck in place, and the phone reacts differently depending on if you're putting on a charger or a case. Ultimately, the design of the phone is so nice and sharp, but for me, this is possibly the best design that Apple's come out with. But that camera bump is outrageous on this phone, and even in 2020, Scratchgate still exists. The cameras are always some of the biggest features on the iPhone, and this year it's no joke. If you want the best camera setup, you have to buy the iPhone 12 Pro Max. But let's be honest, on paper, this is the best camera array. In real life, it still is, but it's not as amazing as Apple makes it seem. Let's start with the front camera, which is good. We get an amazing 12 megapixel camera on the front, capable of amazing portrait shots, night mode shots, and 4K 60 frames per second video. But still, the camera does not focus. In my eyes, the shots are just as good as the iPhone 11 Pro Max, with the night mode shots not looking as good as you would expect them to be. The camera does give deep fusion, which allows for more detail, but it's still weird looking at night. Video is nice, with the option of Dolby Vision HDR, but at 30 frames per second. Besides that, it's pretty much the same sensor as the iPhone 11 Pros. Then on the back, we get the same 12 megapixel sensors, those being a wide, ultra wide, and now a 2.5 times telephoto lens. Here are the specs of the cameras, which pretty much translate to absolutely amazing pictures regardless of what sensor you use, as well as getting night mode on all of those sensors, the latter being kind of annoying. You do get night portraits with help from the LiDAR sensor, which seems to be the only way that you can actually use that sensor. You get the new sensor shift optical image stabilization on the main camera, but honestly, I didn't really notice too much of a difference. You get Deep Fusion, Apple Pro RAW, and Smart HDR3. However, Apple Pro RAW still says coming soon, even with iOS 14.2.1 out. The video recording is a big one for me. Sure, we still get some restrictions with the video recording, like setting 4K 60 frames per second at one sensor at a time, not allowing for switching on the fly like you can with 30 frames per second video. You do get HDR with Dolby Vision at 60 frames per second, which I do notice a little bit of a difference between these and the older phones, but it's mainly at night. During the day, it does just look a little bit brighter. Besides that, the video, again, is pretty much the same as the iPhone 11 Pro Max, just slightly better. Now, would you be surprised if I came and told you that the cameras are worse? Right? Because you expected exactly what I'm telling you. This is the best camera on an iPhone to date. And the biggest. So much has been said about this phone with little changes coming from the previous model, the iPhone 11 Pro Max. It is interesting because the iPhone 12 Pro Max really is kind of a refined version of the iPhone 11 Pro Max. But does it entirely make it better? Sure, the cameras are slightly better, and most of the features are coming from the processor. This year, we get the A14 Bionic chip, which proves to be faster and better than last year's A13 chip, being about 20% better in test, and the GPU being 22% better in test, all on Geekbench 4. The RAM has been bumped up from 4GB to 6GB, making multitasking a lot better on this phone, and honestly, I did actually notice a change. I don't understand how Apple didn't get any hate for having 4GB of RAM in their phone, but Google did when they put it in their Pixel 3s. The design has gone from a rounded design to a sharp design, which is always what I wanted. I'm not really a fan of the rounded devices unless it actually makes sense or it makes it better for using it, but on the older iPhones, it didn't really make too much of a difference for me. The battery is smaller at 3,687 milliamps, while the iPhone 11 Pro Max is 3,969 milliamps. When you get the percentage though, it is just 7% smaller than last year. However, with 5G, the battery life isn't as good as it should be. The screen is slightly bigger, being 0.2 inches bigger, but for some reason I did actually notice a difference. And now I'm going to sit here sifting through other specs trying to find other differences, because that's pretty much what this phone is. Really, it's kind of like a refined version of the iPhone 11 Pro Max. I mean, maybe you can even call it the iPhone 11s Pro Max, but that's a pretty weird name. We still get Face ID, a notch, dual speaker setup, which sounds a tiny little bit better. Pretty much the same antennas, just with 5G. Slightly faster charging, and double the speed of wireless charging at 15 watts. A limited LiDAR scanner, a next-generation neural engine, according to Apple, and 128 gigabytes of base storage. So this is a better phone, but I wouldn't recommend bending over backwards to try and get this phone as soon as possible. So we reached the end of this review, and hopefully you're wondering if this is worth it. If you still own a phone with a home button, then this is definitely going to be a good choice, assuming that the price is good for you. This is the most expensive iPhone that Apple sells, and it definitely shows. Really, I have no complaints for this phone, but the entire time I was using it, it felt kind of pointless. I am coming from the iPhone 11 Pro Max, and everything seems so similar, with the 12 Pro pretty much being a little bit better with RAM management and having 5G. Other than that, you pretty much have to focus on looking for the major differences, besides the look itself. So, I leave you with this. Buy this phone from Apple if you're interested, but make sure you know when your return date ends, just in case. And if you end up keeping the phone, pay for Apple Care. And that's my review of the iPhone 12 Pro Max, the best iPhone that Apple has ever made, because it has to be. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section or on Twitter at @MattofRWR, and feel free to follow me on the social media listed above. Subscribe to my channel and hit that bell button so then YouTube reminds you when other reviews come out, as well as some repair videos. Thanks for watching.